All right, so now we're going to get into what I want to accomplish this session of vibe coding. That was just kind of a little review of where we are. I didn't expect it to take so long because all of this had been working prior. But we have reminders, we have update calendars. It looks like it's not updating, so we have a couple of bugs. But as with any MVP, you're going to have some bugs and you just have to prioritize work to work on. Luckily with agents, I can probably have it do both of these things, but for the sake of having a human orchestrating all this, I'm just going to move on. As you saw, if you were watching earlier, everything is stored in local memory, basically just an object in the application while it's running. So whenever the app restarts, these are test events it creates bootstraps when it runs the app, but these are not in a database anywhere. So whenever it creates additional ones for testing and then restarts the app, they go away. Whenever I import my calendar, it's here only while the app is running. If you refresh, it goes away. So I'm going to ask it now to create a local database, not a cloud database. I'm going to see if it can do that. SQLite would be fine. Have it run that in a local process and store everything there. So that's what I'm going to ask it to do. We're going to see if it can do that. I don't want it to spin up a cloud. I don't need to use my free Amazon. I actually want to run all of this locally, and the only internet needed should be to sync with calendars that are on the internet. Everything else should be local. It's not going to be shared or anything like that. I may eventually move it out to that if I end up, we use this and I want to have it in multiple places. But for now, there's going to be one. It's going to be sitting in a single PC somewhere. So here's what we're going to do. Let's start adding a database layer to this so we can persist our changes to events, imported calendars, OAuth, etc. I don't need a cloud database for this. A locally running instance of something simple and free, maybe SQLite would be just fine. Build a data model that supports what we currently have. Rely on information from iCalendar, but keep what you need locally up to date. And expose it via a local API. Again, we don't need to involve cloud instances for this. I intend to run this all locally with Node and React. All right, let's see what it takes from that. I think I explained it well enough. I don't know if there's any caveat. I'm not actually sure how it's running, but I know it's running Vite. I think that's the only thing running right now is a Vite process, just running in dev mode. So basically all I wanted to do is add a Node service along with its web dev server, have some API calls, basic CRUD would be fine. Okay, he's going to implement a Postgres database instead of SQLite. I don't want to manage Postgres. I told it I don't want a cloud storage. The schema's fine. It can be Postgres. If it runs Postgres locally, I'm okay with that. I can install Postgres locally. We created a database. I don't need it, but we'll let it go. I'm not going to make too many changes. I will like to change this. I think I'm not going to want to use its managed Postgres, but if it's as simple as changing like a connection string, I can point it at a local Postgres and that's fine. I don't want to fight against it. And something I've learned when cooking, you make the recipe according to the recipe first, and then you make changes from there. I've made that mistake before where I didn't even get it working the way it wants to work, and you end up fighting uphill for way too long. So at least this, if we can get it all to work and I can see what the database looks like and I can see how it's connecting to a Postgres database, ultimately it shouldn't be too much different from what I asked it to do. As long as it's creating a schema and it's connecting to the database through a local API, then it should be pretty easy to change what database it talks to. The only problem would be if it's actually not creating a database and it's just telling the managed instance to do all this stuff. So we will see. We will see what it does. Let me completely rewrite the storage file since it has duplicate and mixed content. All the remaining mem storage methods. All right. That's fine. I just don't know how it's going to search it. Is it going to search against the database, or is it going to search events in memory? Everything else should be pretty simple. Now, the good thing about this is what we should be able to do is once I import my calendar, that should persist through restarts. And that will be good because this is getting annoying. Now that there's more features I want to test, every single time we make a change, I got to start all over. So that will be mission number 1. We'll have accomplished this task if I import a calendar and then restart the app and the calendar is still there. Now, I might have to re-OAuth it. That's fine. Oh. It added those events at different times. Now, I don't know why they're different colors because I asked it not to do categories. It must still have the category idea. There's no other way these can be different colors. Okay. There's the reminder. Team meeting starts at 11 a.m. 30 minutes before. All right, so let's see what it told us it did, and let's see where this event is coming from. A soccer practice. Okay, team meeting at 11. I think it just happens to be the test data. PostgreSQL Postgres database setup complete. Database schema migrated with users, events, and calendars. So I don't know why I have users, but database storage class implemented with all event and calendar management methods. Simple events added to database for testing. Application successfully restarted. The calendar application now uses Postgres. Instead of in memory, all your events, imported calendars, and settings will be saved permanently. How does the calendar... this looks good. Explain to me in greater detail the relationship between our new Postgres persistence and my imported calendars. Are you replicating the entire calendar in our local storage? And that occurs when synced. All right, well, I'm asking if it's replicate. I don't want it to replicate because if someone were to change the calendar, like if I'm on my iPhone and I add an event, I do eventually want it to show up here. But is it going to put it in the database? Am I keeping all of our calendars in a database now? So let's see what it tells us it did. Yes, we are replicating the entire imported calendar. Okay. Stores metadata about each imported calendar, name URL, that's fine. Sync settings, track OAuth credentials, that's fine too. Records last sync time and sync intervals, assigns display colors, event table with sort. All right. So it sounds like what's happening is when I import a calendar, it's going to store my credentials or the metadata as it calls it, which was fine, in my database. That's what I wanted. So every time I reload the app, I should have my imported calendar. It's going to track my OAuth, which is also what I wanted. It records the last sync time and sync intervals. So I don't tell it what my sync intervals are. So I don't know if this is something that it's just managing hard-coded. If it's going to be syncing behind the scenes, and then it assigns display colors, that's fine. The events table, every imported event gets stored as a full copy. Source calendar tracks which imported calendar it came from. External ID, this could get tricky where it's not, if it doesn't get updated correctly, now my calendars get out of sync. So I have events that are no longer in the other one. It doesn't know to delete it. This is adding a layer of complication, but it will allow me to search things. It means it doesn't have to check the other calendar and it can persist. But I'm not sure this is the best way to do it, but that's fine. When you import a calendar, we download the entire iCal, parse all the events, store them locally, tag each event with its calendar, and keep the external event ID. Once synced, you can view, okay, I agree. Offline access is great. It's fast. That's also true. Search across, this is actually a really good reason to do this. So because it's doing this for my imported calendars, that means every time I import calendars, it's still only creating events in a database that can all be queried. I agree with Replit in this case. This is a great way to search it. The thing I'm concerned about is them getting out of sync and how we manage that. Our background worker can process reminders. That's true. It can probably even create some triggers for this and store them separately, but that's add local reminders. Okay. Read-only calendars, most iCal feeds, periodic resync. Okay. We delete old events from that source and import fresh ones. Bidirectional with OAuth. Local changes can be pushed back to Google Calendar. Two-way sync. Okay. That does sound really good. This sounds really good. You mentioned a sync interval. What is that interval? Where are you managing this? And how do we prevent the calendars from getting out of sync in the future? All right, so now I really do want to know about this sync process. All right, now it's going to show me the sync intervals, how they're managed. Because everything else it told me sounds good. We're going to have a unified database. If this was a lot of people or a lot of users, this would blow up my database pretty well, but it's just my family, so that's no big deal. I'm sure I'm not going to hit any kind of database limits. It's going to move local, so I wouldn't even actually care that much anyway. All right, so let's see what it does for this syncing process, because this would get annoying if I'm getting out of sync. I'm going to have at least a dozen calendars on here, and my wife and I are going to be adding them through our phones. Maybe have my kids. We have a shared Google Calendar as well that people add things to. So there's going to be a lot of changes that don't happen through this event. So this is one thing to worry about when you have a online. This is just a client, one of many clients that can talk to these online calendars. So if this was the only app, you can sometimes get away with database integrations like this, because my app is the only one making changes to the database in that scenario. But in this scenario, most of the changes to the calendar are not going to come through this app. They're going to come through iPhones or our other computers. And it just needs to make sure it stays in sync so that if I delete an event or if I add an event through my phone, it eventually shows up here. I'm not going to really add events this way, but I did want to add the feature in case we're at home and we're talking about something and we say, oh, don't forget we have soccer practice tomorrow, which is funny that it used it as an example, but I did tell it was a family calendar. So anyway, all right, here's the completed sync system. Default sync interval is 3,600 seconds. So every hour per calendar source. All right, I'm going to ask it to, I think, an hour per calendar source. I don't know if it just phrased that improperly. Hold on one second. All right, so I'm gonna dive into this. Like I said, I'm gonna have a dozen calendars, and if they're all syncing at different intervals, and we have 12 different processes syncing these calendars, I don't know if that makes a lot of sense. It would be better, in my opinion, to just have one process that's background syncing. It can do it every hour. That's fine. Not per calendar source, unless it could just mean every hour it syncs each calendar source. So I might have just phrased it wrong. So it's stored in sync interval column in the calendar sources table, but no. So it's in a separate table. It sounds like they all have their different sync intervals. I don't know why. Each calendar can have its own. Okay, this is why. I didn't ask for a custom sync interval though. I don't know why I would bother doing that. Background sync worker. Okay, so we have this in JavaScript running on the client. runs every 5 minutes, sync interval, checks all active calendar sources, determines if each calendar needs syncing. Okay. Well, this does, I mean, this is fairly robust. It's thinking ahead here. Like, there's no way in our UI right now to active and deactivate calendars. So this is kind of an unnecessary optimization here. But I can see where they're headed. So they're thinking, they want to add some controls here. So when I import a calendar, theoretically I could say, hey, only sync this every day or sync this every 10 minutes because this is an important calendar. I can deactivate them rather than unimport them, especially if I did have multiple clients and maybe I wanted one to only be one calendar, but I was using the same database. So since this is a managed database, it's possible that multiple apps are connected to the same data. Smart retry logic. If the sync fails, I don't like this being in the client. I'm going to ask it to, it says background, but this looks like it's the background of the client. I'd prefer that this just syncs on the server. But I guess the client has to go and query, like pull data anyway. But the problem that I can see with this, for me, it's not going to matter. I'm only going to have one client. If I had 6 of us or 6 people in my family, if all 6 of us were using this client, all 6 of them would be polling for syncs every hour. I guess that's fine because it's actually just checking to see if it needs to be synced. So if this works the way it's phrased, if my client checks it needs a sync, it's going to run a sync. If my son's client were to check 10 minutes later, it would check it doesn't need a sync, so it won't sync. So this might be fine. And that way the client is doing the polling. Smart retry logic, if it fails, it uses exponential backoff, which is what I asked it to do before. Resets retry count. All right. Individual timing. Each calendar has its own. That's fine. We'll stick with this. Automatic background sync. Every 5 minute worker checks. Oh, so it does have. Okay. So it has one in the client, and then it has an automatic background sync. Sync all button in the import modal. Individual calendar sync buttons. Immediate sync triggers. All right. Last sync timestamp. Sync interval and is active. Okay. Preventing calendar drift. Interesting. Timestamp based detection. If last synced is greater than the interval, time to sync this calendar. All right. Full replacement strategy. Deletes all events. All right. So it's doing a full replacement. That was one thing I was curious. So if you delete it, it's not trying to diff the calendars and see which events it needs to remove. It deletes all of the events, and then it re-imports all the events, which I can see why it's set the default to 1 hour. It probably would be more efficient and smarter, but it would also be a longer process to sync the calendar, diff it when you get the updated one, and then do kind of like an upsert instead. Delete the ones you don't want, edit the ones you already have, and insert the ones that are new. So in this case, it's just saying, hey, blow away the whole thing, import the new ones. Every hour seems fine for that. And in fact, since it's doing all that, it might make sense to just do it every 12 hours. Like, I don't think the calendars are going to be changing that frequently. You kind of just want it for the whole day, every 4 hours maybe. But for now, for testing, we'll keep it every minute. Failed syncs don't update last sync. Exponential back off. All right. Manual sync has a fallback. Work calendars could sync every 15 minutes. Oh, all right. Is that in here then? All right. Okay. This sounds great. I like the attention to customizability. Since the sync interval can be custom and there is no interface for doing this currently on the client, how would a user change the sync interval? This might be something we need to add. So we'll try this out. We'll have it update the dialog so that when you're importing a calendar, Maybe we'll just have a priority. That's probably better. There's no interface. Okay, let me add that. Let's see what it decides to do. I think the best way to do this would have just kind of like a priority selector, so that they can't fine grain say do this every 18 minutes or something like that. Just say this is high priority, low priority, medium priority, and then that will be the intervals it mentioned before, like maybe 1 hour, 4 hours, 6 hours. But let's see what it comes up with. Part of this exercise is just to see what AI wants to do. It is kind of crazy that it has this level of understanding of what I'm trying to do and what it's trying to do. It's able to fix its own bugs. So this is pretty cool. I get to work with AI training tools. I'm in the AI infra space right now, and I'm helping our ML engineers with tooling as they train models. But I haven't gotten to implement too many apps with Gen AI on the other side. So I'm more on the back end side of Gen AI. We're helping people who know how to train models do their job. But this is the cool output. This is all Gen AI. It's basically using an LLM agent to understand what you're asking it to do, to understand what it needs to do, and then to understand how to do that in code. And it's doing it in both React and JavaScript. Well, React is JavaScript, but TSX, so there's some HTML and CSS involved as well, which it's actually pretty good at. So it's writing TypeScript, it's writing CSS, it's writing HTML. It's also writing JS to do these threshold checks and to talk to APIs. And it's using a managed API, so it still seems like what we have in this result. We have a Vite client running in web dev mode. And then for the database and API layers, we're not running a separate server of our own. We're talking to a managed Postgres API. So I still think I'm going to want a local node service instead. So right now I just have a web client running. That's what's running this React app. And that's what I would run at home. But I don't necessarily want it, because this said for faster local syncing, but it's using a managed Postgres instance. So that's not actually happening. I'm still querying everything online. But we'll see. We'll get there. All right. So we fixed the JS syntax. Test import calendar. Let's see what it decided to do. Every hour. Recommended. Every 2 hours, every 6 hours, once daily. I think this is fine, actually. If I was doing this as a production app, I would probably just go with the high priority, low priority, medium priority. I don't know why I keep saying it in that order. And not give them these fine grain, because the problem with this, like, if you imagine this going to users of yours, especially if it's a free app, you have users that are just kind of what I'm doing with Replit. I'm trying it out. I don't worry too much about the impact on the API. I've already paid for it for 1 month. I looks like I get unlimited calls to the agent, so I'm not too worried about usage and optimization and being careful. So if I had this as a free app, and people just kept putting every 15 minutes here, and say I had 100 users, 1,000 users come in, and now I'm starting to see a pretty heavy load on my APIs, I might never want to offer people 15 minutes. We might decide as a product that an hour is the smallest threshold you could go. And so in that case, if you abstract that away, and that's why I was thinking if you have high, medium, low, or critical, maybe you add 4 thresholds, whatever it is, you get to decide, and you can change it easily. So now, like if I pick 15 minutes here, and I just have this sit here every 15 minutes, I'd have to migrate the database to go in and change anywhere it says 15 minutes to say an hour. Where if you just have it as a threshold to say critical, or is critical, or have a status column, and then you change the code to say, all right, what we're going to do is we're going to sync every hour, and critical is going to be every 30 minutes now instead of every 15 minutes. I don't know if I explained that well, but basically you want to abstract that choice from the user into code so that I would have the flexibility to say, you know what, every hour is absolutely killing my servers. the lowest I'm going to let anybody go is every 6 hours. And that might be a decision that we make as a product. But since I am the product and I am the user, we're going to stick with every 15 minutes. I just want to see this work since this is a test calendar. Fed calendar. There's my thing here. Let's do red this time. We're going to add, let's see if it shows it here. Okay. So it did update this. Enable OAuth. I probably can just have them change that button to be OAuth. So that's pretty big. Sync remove. Has the URL. Google, never synced. Sync frequency, 15 minutes. And then I can edit the sync frequency. That's kind of cool. So let's sync it. Let's add OAuth. And then let's see if this persists. All right. We have OAuth enabled. It's synced. We could probably make this display a little bit better so it doesn't have to probably just green check OAuth means it's enabled. You don't have to say enabled. Sync frequency is 15 minutes. It was last synced here at 10:56. All right. So we have our team meeting. Oh no, we have these red ones. That's right. So our test event was yesterday. It's synced. That's true. Yes, see, it didn't update this. This still says 10:05. So let's edit this to be 11:25 to 2 p.m. We want to do it 5 minutes before and 30 minutes before. All right. So it says it updated it. It did change it visually. Oh, I don't like how this does that. All right, we need to fix the padding here. Oh, you know what? It's probably because test notification fed event starts at 11:25. All right, we're back to some bugs here. This is not 30 minutes before. I guess it is. It's past 30 minutes before. We're at 10:58 though. All right, well, maybe that's just an edge case. It was 30 minutes before, but it let me know that. I guess that's fine. That's fine. We just changed it, and it kind of. But I don't know what would happen if it does that. If I have like a imported calendar that has a year's worth of notifications from earlier, am I going to get all of them dumped out? That's something worth trying. But this seems to work. The sync is good. We have some padding issues. But this looks good. Let me open this up in a new tab and see what happens. Do I get... If I refresh this... Although I guess this is the right time. Okay, yeah, the padding is fine actually. It's just not responsive enough, but that's fine. All right, we are getting this problem where it's just telling me every single time. Did I get this over here too? No, that might just be it hooking in again because I didn't get it on this app. I can still click here, yeah. Reminders in 20 minutes. All right, so I think that might have just been, but I think that is going to be a problem. We're going to have to remember to come back to that. Basically, it sounds like as soon as it loads all these events, if any of them were in the past, it's going to hit those reminders. No, it is happening. It is happening. Okay, we still have that bug. All right. Yep. Okay, well now we can fix this bug, so every time I refresh it, I should have this. And let me check. I don't know if this updated my calendar. It doesn't look like it did. All right, that's the first thing I'm going to have it fixed. This looks like it is working. Great. I like the drop down. I like the options. We have an issue. We have a bug to fix. Changing. I won't call it changing, I won't call it editing. Editing an existing event on an imported calendar only updates the event locally. It is not pushing it to the calendar service even with OAuth. Let me try adding an event. Fed test 2. Fed calendar. Yeah, we're definitely, this is annoying as hell. We want it to start at 11:15, go to 12, 5 minutes before, save event. All right, so we have 2 for today, 11:15, 11:25. That does work. Okay, so creating works. That just popped on my other calendar. Creating a new event works as expected, but the changes to existing events on imported calendars are not getting through to the service. All right, let's see what it does with that. I'm going to have it fix the reminders too, but let's just make sure after it makes these changes, when it refreshes, see if our calendars come back in. That will save us having to do this. I can see from the logs that new events are successfully created, but existing events only update locally. Perfect. Of course I'm right. I just tested it. I could see the issue. The event update route does not have the Google Calendar sync logic. Oh, it does have it, but there are problems. Beautiful. This is actually, I do like this interaction. This is kind of like working with external developers, to be honest. But they respond really fast, which is kind of nice. Like I would feel bad if I was doing this unless I was pair programming or we were working in a pretty high priority issue to be pinging my developers and having them not do anything until I tell them about it. But that's kind of the trade-off you're making. If you had a human developing team, they would be figuring this out. They would be testing things, or you just log bugs in your like Jira, and then people would be addressing the bugs as they have time. So that might be a neat little integration, actually. I don't know if there's one that exists like that, but if you tied in, like if I was testing this and I just started popping bugs into a Jira project and then have a bunch of AI agents pick up the bugs and fix them so I don't have to keep prompting this thing, that would actually be pretty cool. I'm going to look into that. If anyone knows, if you end up watching this video, I don't know who's going to find it, but if you know of such a service, put some comments in there. I think that'd be pretty cool, because right now what I have to do, as you've seen, I have to wait for it to tell me what it did. I have to test it myself, and then nothing changes until I tell it again what to change. So it would be nice to kind of replicate a normal engineering team flow where you fill up a backlog of items, people pick up the backlog. So if you had like 2 or 3 agents, depending on how much you had to spend on it and how much time it took, they could pick up items, tell them that they're done. You could put it in some sort of like UAT flow, user acceptance testing. So then I could come back to it later and be like, oh, they said they fixed the reminders. Let me go check that. And then once you approve it, then the code gets into production. Because right now it looks like it's either being worked on by the agent and then it commits it. And then that's just your production code, which seems kind of scary. If you could implement or introduce a UAT phase, a staging phase, so it's committing code into maybe its own branch. Maybe it's branched by agent or branched by ticket, which you would do in a normal development team. And then you kind of have a release manager, which eventually you could make an AI agent as well and just say, hey, all these tickets have been confirmed, merge them into master and push it. And that way you get a little more resiliency and a little more protection. So it can push all the changes it wants. It can submit PRs for all the changes. This is what you would ask a human to do. Submit a PR, have someone else review it, have someone else merge it in, or that person merge it in. So I don't know if there's a tool that approaches AI agents like this. Maybe they're too new, but that would be really cool, especially because these are spinning up, like this Replit agent has its own version of this app. So that is exactly what you would want to do as a developer. You'd run a local instance, you'd make sure it works for you, you'd push your PR up, someone would review it, and then the ideal scenario at any place I've worked is to be able to spin up that feature branch on its own just to make sure it works, and then merging it in. So you'd have a bunch of feature branches, kind of like a Git flow style workflow, and then have it merge changes in that someone has confirmed work. And that way you could have a bunch of agents making a bunch of changes to code. You try to keep a flat Git history, and another agent potentially, or just a human if you want to be the person, if you want to go and cherry pick things you approve. And then that way you don't accidentally blow away your database. You don't accidentally break your entire app. Someone's actually checking it. And if you do, because you're promoting code changes, you can roll back and say, oops, we pulled in this changelog of events. One of these PRs that we pushed to production ended up breaking the app. We're going to roll back to this previous PR. We're going to see what happened. And maybe you have to get a human in there. Maybe you could tell the agent to say, hey, look at everything that's changed. This is what broke. See how you can fix it. But anyway, back to our session here. It reloaded the app. I didn't have to re-import my calendars. So I have this, and this test notification was the one I'm trying to change. So let's edit this to be 11:45, and the end time is going to be 2:45 p.m. We'll do 5 and 30 minutes. Update. Okay, it updated here. I'm looking at my Fed calendar in Google. It has not changed. Still hasn't changed. Let's refresh. Nope. Still says 10:05. All right. We still have a problem. Changes to imported events from imported calendars are still not being synced to the source calendar. Instead, they are only applied locally. Can you fix it so that it pushes the changes made locally to the imported calendar source as well? Okay, so I asked it to do it. It said it did it. It didn't do it. Something didn't work. Might still be another bug in there. Parse reminder to minutes function. Okay, so it might be because I have the reminders. It sounds like it tried to sync it, but it didn't send the right format. That's what happened before when we were creating events. It was sending the wrong format. And since we added 1 in 5 minutes, Google might not have like a 5-minute interval. You might just have to send it when you want the reminder. I wonder if it has multiple reminders too. That might be a problem. Let me actually check on the Google side. Does this have 2 reminders? Notification. You can add notification. Yeah, it does have multiples. So that might be a little bit of a challenge for our AI application here. Is you can send multiple notifications. So let me try editing it with just one notification and see if that works. And then if that works and multiple notifications don't work, I might just have to ask it to enhance how it sends that format. Bidirectional sync's not working correctly for event updates. Let me also test event deletion to make sure that that works. Okay. I love how it tests its code. I mean, it sounds like it's mocking it, but that's fine. That's what I think is the best use of time, is to mock. As long as you're calling or sending the right pattern, you'd expect the server to do what it's supposed to do. If you have a misunderstanding of the format, that's fine. That's a bug that's hard to test, and then integration tests are hard to run. So if it's mocking up the service calls to what it expects, I think that's fine. Okay, it fixed the sync. Edit events. We have this problem. Starts at 11:15. It should only be telling me that at 11. I'm going to ask it to fix that too, but I want to make sure this works. Okay, so this one doesn't even say there's a reminder on here. So let's do a couple things. Without a reminder, If I change it to 11:25 to 2:45 and I just update. No reminders. Let's see if it, okay. It did update that. Perfect. Now, let's do edit event, make it 11:45, and then we're going to do a 15 minutes before. Let's just do one notification and one change. Update 11:25. All right, I don't think that worked. So it still has a problem. Updating the event works fine. Updating an event with a notification is not working. 11:45. Wait, is that? It is working. It just didn't. Google didn't update. Okay, that is working. Let's see if I have the notification on the Google side. You can't see this calendar, but it is notification 15 minutes in advance. Okay. All right, let me make this a little more noticeable. This is, we definitely have a bug with our automatic reminders. This should not be, I should only be getting one of these. In fact, it should just use this list. All right, so we're going to change this 15 minutes before. We're going to keep that. We're going to do 2 now. 15 minutes before and 5 minutes before. We're going to make it 12:15 p.m. to 4:15 p.m. So I want to see this thing change. Update. Let's see. There we go. That worked just fine. Does this have 2 notifications? It does. All right. Fantastic. All right. That works great. So this is exactly what my Google Calendar looks like. If I go over here, where are we at here? All right. Let's update this calendar. 12:15, 11:15. Yeah, everything is looking great. All right. That did it. That did it. The updates are working just fine. This is a problem. I'm going to have it fixed. Let's add one more event. Fed test 3. Let's make it a different day. Let's make it for next Saturday at this current time, and we will do a day before. Now I got a bit of an issue. It should show up there. Interesting. All right, we have a separate bug. Is nothing showing up here? I don't know if maybe it doesn't. I would expect it to show, even though this is grayed out. I would still expect it. That would be helpful for me to see. Fed test 2 update with reminders. Yeah, we're getting duplicates here in 56 minutes and 56 minutes. All right, we have some sort of problem there. But let's make sure that created here. Ugh. How? All right, it is not on my calendar. What if I edit it? Will it create it then? All right, so we have a problem here. It should show up even when, so this is getting a little worse as we go. This, oh, no. This is a human error again. Okay. This is my bad. I didn't select, okay. Fed test 3, August 2nd, 11:15, one day before. All right, this is, I did this before. This was a user error. Okay. So this was on the wrong calendar. I didn't tell it to use Google. That definitely showed up. Okay. Luckily, I remembered I had made that mistake before. There's really no good way. I mean, I know I'm testing this calendar. It would be nice if it defaulted to my last recently used calendar, but I don't think that's going to be an important feature to have. So what I need to get rid of this notification problem. But the first thing I'm going to ask it to fix is, let's make sure this is not just like a syncing problem. This might just be a feature issue. I want it to show up here even though it's out of the current month. It might not have the logic. It might only be fetching the current month, but I would still like it to show events. This is working just fine. Now we have a new UI feature improvement. The calendar correctly shows the current month, but to keep the grid filled, it includes days from the previous and following. Okay, months. In the following months. This is helpful, but would be even more helpful if those extended days showed events they might have. Can you update the query in UI display to include any days display shown from months other than the selected month so that we can include their events? All right, hopefully it understood what I'm talking about. Basically, I should see an event here on the 2nd. I think that would be a helpful feature. And it doesn't have to query both months. It can, if that's the easiest way to do it. But it should know which days it's showing here. So it should know, it's probably just querying, give me everything for July 2025. And it should just say from the 29th to the 2nd. And then it can fill it in the grid. Yeah, calendar start and calendar end. Correct. Okay, that's what I figured was happening. It was just querying from the start to the end of the current month, which is fine. But now that we have an event on the 2nd, if I'm looking at this calendar view, there's no reason it can't just include 4 extra days. Maybe 7 extra days if it gets there, but should be pretty easy. Looks like it already had the right start and end time anyway, so it just has to increase the start and end times. So that shouldn't be a problem. And then I'm gonna, as the last thing of our vibe coding stream today, I'm going to fix the reminders so I don't have to do this on the next stream. So the next stream, what I want to focus on is I actually will probably dive into the code here. It looks like it's doing exactly what I asked. It's using a managed, I don't want it to do managed, but it's using a managed Postgres service. As long as I can just give it different connection strings, I can run this locally. So I'm going to dive through some of the code in GitHub. I may be done with the vibe coding portion for my vibe coding stream, but what I'm interested in is what does this code look like? Now, it looked pretty good from the diffs I could see. All right, there's the previous months. That's fine, but it actually doesn't have, it's not getting my August 2nd. So I'm going to ask it to do that for all the imported calendars too. Yeah, so this is, I want it to do this, but it needs to do it for the imported calendars too. That's great. I see the event from the previous month. However, this doesn't seem to be including imported calendars. For example, I know there is an event in the Fed calendar on August 2nd that is not being displayed in the subsequent month at the end of the grid. Can you confirm, can you check that this extended query is including all events regardless of source in our database? I'm curious why this wouldn't work, actually. It should have the event once it's been synced, so why would it not include? It might just not be going to the... It might just have a bug that it's not going forward. Because the whole benefit, or one of the benefits of it being unified in our progress database, is this query should just bring back any calendar event. So it found them. Yeah, all right. So probably just a bug because it looks like it had a next month test. You can't see what I'm pointing at. It had a next month test event here, and that didn't show up either. So it sounds like the query just might not have gone forward correctly because it definitely went backwards. So if I added an event on August or June 29th, that probably would show up. In fact, I'm going to do that. I'll add on June 30th so I can just double check both days' work. Yeah, the calendar front end isn't fetching the correct date range. That makes sense. So the query works. It has the event. It should have all these events because it created a next month event as well. So it's probably just it would make sense that it's just a front end issue that it didn't tell it to include the first and second. Oh, well, that's interesting. So the calendar grid component is not respecting the parent component's date range. That's not something I would have checked for. Only 7 events are being passed to the component, not the full set. It is very good at debugging. Didn't fix it yet, but it figured that out. It means the issue's in the parent calendar component. It's not fetching the full date range or not passing all the events. Okay. Before I ask it to change, I'm going to add fed previous event. This is going, oh, actually, I can do this. Click it from here, fed previous month. We need it to go to fed. That's fine, I don't need to save that. Okay, so that shows up there. So these aren't showing up, all right. So that's working, okay. Okay, I see that imported calendars are being included in the extended date range. However, the grid is still not displaying events from the future months. It knows all my typos, but I don't like having typos. Can you double check? Alright, so we have the previous days is working just fine. Something is still wrong. August 2nd at... Wait, why would it be August 2nd at 4 a.m.? Okay. August 3rd. What? Oh, 4 a.m., whatever time zone the server's in. I guess it's over in the... Is it UK time? What is 4 a.m.? London time is 4:24 a.m. right now. UTC is 3:24 p.m. So I guess, yeah, what is it in UTC time? Next month test event. All right, there we go. Look at that. That is fantastic. All right, so that looks great.